get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Sanish Mondkar. You can check him out at legion.co. And Sanish, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of our top SaaS and AI series, if you go to Legion, you go to Legion AI, they have a little, in the navigation there, and check out what they're doing. He's got a lot of thoughts on AI, and you have a unique perspective on this because you help a lot of not just tech companies, but brick and mortar, in various industries. So we're going to dig into that. Some other episodes of the podcast in that genre. I had the co-founder of Zapier on. That was a really good episode. One of the co-founders of Pipedrive, a great episode there. Mailshake also, he talked about how he has been acquiring SaaS companies. So, and the founder of Jotform as well, and what they're doing and how he grew to 25 million users. It was pretty incredible. So that and many more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that in a few ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast so they get ROI. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production. Number two, we're an easy button for a company's gifting. So we make gifting staying top of mind. It could be for clients, for partners, for prospects, for even staff. From a culture perspective, simple, easy, and actually affordable. You just give us a list of the people. We do everything of the sending. It's all branded to your company. By the way, we don't send like tchotchkes. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we like sending food. Actually, because I like getting food, Sanish. So the number one thing, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free for a company to build amazing relationships. And that's the number one thing in my life is relationships. And I always look at ways how I can give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past 15 years than to profile the people and companies I admire and send them sweet treats in the mail. So you can check it out at rise25.com or email support@rise25.com. I'm really excited to introduce Sanish Mondkar. He's the CEO and founder of Legion, Legion Co. And he has more than 20 years of strategic experience in products and technology. He had a previous role as chief product officer at SAP, and he was responsible for all procurement and business network products and technology. Just to give you an idea of the realm of that, it represented over $1 billion of annual revenue. So no small feat there, Sanish. It's a big position. Parlayed those skills and leadership into starting Legion. And Legion is reinventing the way businesses can manage and engage with their hourly workforce. They use data-driven and AI-based approach that basically upgrades the operational efficiency for the employer side and also the job satisfaction for the employees. So, Sanish, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off. Just talk about Legion and what you do. I'm going to pull up the website.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Legion is reinventing workforce management as a category. So workforce management is an enterprise category, enterprise software category that's been around for a while. Its genesis was in accurately managing hourly workforce, especially from a payroll accuracy standpoint. As you know, there are many, many labor-intensive industries out there: retail, hospitality, manufacturing, distribution centers, so on and so forth. In fact, hourly workforce represents a majority of the workforce in the United States and in the world. So there were these platforms built historically, which would be focused on managing employees' timesheets and making sure they're clocking in properly and
It's a pain in the butt.
And making sure that they're getting paid accurately. And those evolved to become workforce management platforms where the next problem they start solving was scheduling employees, to the point of demand and shift management and so on and so forth. Where Legion came in was when we looked at what was built for decades prior to us. We said that's great. It's solving some real problems is very important category of software for labor-intensive businesses. But there were two things missing, and they were really foundational things. First is workforce management wasn't really automated. It wasn't a high-tech category. There was a lot of efficiency that you could gain by just automating it smartly. Like we call it intelligent automation at Legion. But more importantly, workforce management was not built to deliver any value to the workforce. It was built with the cost management and labor optimization or wage optimization, pick any of these terms. It was really meant to protect employers from excessive costs of labor, which is an important goal, don't get me wrong. But employees for most of these industries, the workforce management platform is probably the only platform employees touch on a regular basis. So, in other words, that platform had the opportunity to add value to the employee with every single engagement and interaction, but it kind of completely missed that opportunity, and instead it just focused on cost and efficiency and things like that. We thought that was an incomplete platform when I founded Legion. I said, look, we workforce management plus should be more holistic and inclusive. It should provide value to the employer and the employees. In fact, if an employer does a better job of engaging and adding value to the employee's experience, the employee turnover would be much lower, which, as you know, in these industries, it's really very high, and you would actually end up saving more on cost of labor by reducing your cost of worker replacement. So the whole picture of how workforce management should evolve smartly, fully automated, and employee-centric is what made sense to us, and that's why the company was founded. Now, I'll say one more thing. As we started digging into what we need to do, we realized very quickly we had to reinvent and rebuild workforce management from the ground up to really make this possible. And that's what we've been working on past 9 years. We've been very successful in taking our brand of workforce management to the market. And as you see in our website, a lot of capabilities and a lot of great customers who have chosen us.
I have a lot of questions on that, and I'll get into why even start this type of company in the first place. But I want to get into one thing you said before we get to that, which is,
Yeah.
obviously the employer side, it makes sense, right? It helps keep track of hourly employees. It helps like manage a bunch of schedules. What have you found? How did you get the employees liking it and increasing their job satisfaction? What features in the platform did you build in for that
Yeah.
purpose?
So when you think about, so let's take food and beverage industry, especially QSR, the turnover rate of employees is
Yep.
in most cities over 100%,
Yep.
right? Which is kind of insane when you think about it. Like for our jobs, imagine you lose all your
It's
colleagues are
terrible. Yeah, I'm looking at your
yeah,
website. Some of my favorites, you have Portillo's on there. Love
yeah,
Portillo's. You have Panda Express on
yeah,
there. A bunch of
exactly.
quick service. Yeah.
And retail is close to 75%, US turnover. So these are very high numbers, right? Now, but here's the real insight. When you dig in and you dig in data and you look at a lot of these, you look at employee feedback. We at Legion, almost since the founding days, we do an annual survey of hourly workers and managers. We've done a lot of research on both from our customers, but also from the market. And here's the unique insight. The unique insight is actually employees are not leaving because of pay. And once you understand that, you're like, well, what are they? Oh my God, what are they leaving for? Right? And the reason why we know they're not leaving for pay is because pay tends to be standardized across these jobs in a metropolitan area or a city or a state and things like that. Right? So, for example, a restaurant worker in San Francisco, where I live, is not going to likely find another restaurant across the street that pays more, right? But at the same time, they're leaving out over 100% turnover rate. So what is it? It's worth asking that question, because that every worker that you can prevent leaving or prevent the attrition is actually going to be a happier worker, it's going to serve your customers better. You are not incurring a cost of worker replacement, which is hiring and training costs and all those things. So it's worth asking this question. And we obsessed with that question especially in the early days of Legion. And we found out initially there were two things. Now there is a third thing that has emerged, right? So now today, I call that as the trifecta of employee engagement for hourly workers. And if you do those three things, you don't have to, if you can do it without Legion, more power to you. But the more important thing is do it. And those three things are enabling employees to own their schedule to whatever extent is possible and feasible for your business, right? Sometimes 100% ownership like a gig job is not possible, but to the extent it's possible, because most of the friction with a job comes from I can't work these Thursdays, but next week I want to work Thursday, or I maximize. I'm balancing this job with two other jobs or school or all the so the
It's giving
friction
people
of these jobs.
flexibility.
Exactly. We call it schedule ownership at Legion. Owning the schedule and schedule ownership is not just about time and day, but also I want more hours, I want less hours, because hours directly translates to pay. So that is probably the most important thing you can do. Following that is having giving a reasonable experience to your employees in terms of, like today, close to 25% of the workforce in these industries is Gen Z, over 60% is millennial. I mean, these are internet generations. They're not coming to these jobs and uh, they don't get any company email addresses. 9 out of 10 retailers don't have anything of that sort. So just the experience of, do I have to negotiate everything with my managers? Can I just go to an app and make the, inputs a few things and get at least something is done? Is it efficient? Is it modern? Is it digital? Is there a mobile app? Those things really matter, right? And they did not matter 10 years ago as much to the extent that they do now. But now it's really employees have choices. They can get that type of flexibility and experience by doing DoorDash jobs or other jobs instead of a retail or a QSR jobs. The pay is going to be the same. So that's what you're competing with as a brick and mortar business. And you need to up your game of employee experience. And more important, and equally important, the third leg of that stool, which has emerged in the past 3 years, is what we call earned wage access. After my shift is over, I need to get paid. Why am I waiting for a week for your payroll to run or 2 weeks for your payroll to run? That's what gig jobs give you. I would expect that in my retail jobs, in my brick and mortar jobs, in my distribution center jobs, in my manufacturing job. So if you do those three things, um, schedule ownership, a modern experience for communications and self-service, and earned wage access, instant pay as it's called, our data shows you will cut your attrition by roughly 35%, which is massive,
Can we
right?
talk about the platform in
Yeah.
those three things for a second? So with Legion, you said own your own schedule. By the way, there's a great book, Drive by Daniel Pink. It talks about kind of some of the research behind what you're talking about, like giving people autonomy.
Yep.
Does it allow people to kind of swap with
Yeah.
their other staff members easily and kind of communicate?
Absolutely. And the thing about doing that properly is swapping shifts could be done in a way that uh, creates some business risk, like there could be compliance risk and things like that. But swapping can also be done in a way that those things are taken care of by the platform, right? So that's what I mean by true self-service, where the employer is actually not suffering any type of consequences of the self-service and empowerment that's provided to the
Hmm.
employees. And there are many, many examples of this. Swapping is probably one of the easiest ones, but there are like 100 other things that the Legion platform does where
Yeah,
those.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I could
Yeah.
visualize people. The what normally happens is they try and get their coworkers' numbers. They're
Yeah.
texting different people, trying to
And
find it,
asking
as
the
opposed to
managers and yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I could see this really paramount in healthcare, right? I know you help healthcare because if I'm a nurse or someone like that, hey, listen, I got to do something. I need to have someone replace me. There's probably pre-approvals that are in place that allow people to kind of
Yeah.
to do that very easily. I'm curious the evolution of the type of customers you work with, right? Because, there's, I know you have convenience stores, you have health and fitness, you have healthcare, hospitality, pet care. You talked about restaurants. Where did it start? And then, because, you could have probably just focused forever on restaurants and been busy.
It started with quick serve restaurants, specifically cafes in the San Francisco Bay Area, in particular Phil's Coffee. I'm a huge fan of Phil's Coffee, and it was they were our first customer. They were very forward looking about, you know, really enabling and empowering their baristas to be more autonomous in terms of creating the schedules and picking their shifts and things like that. But they wanted to make sure that the overall labor efficiency and cost is also taken care of and under control. So, which meant that you have to solve both sides of the equation. It's one thing to provide autonomy to employees and things like that, but you also have to guarantee that it doesn't come with a greater cost to the customer, right? To the employer. So we built a lot of early capabilities and one of those capabilities is demand forecasting, which is still it's completely AI powered. It is still
Interesting. So, if like a restaurant, they
yeah.
can they can kind of look and actually will help their business maybe staff up
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
down.
So if I ask you a simple question, let's say you were running a restaurant and I tell you, hey, I'm going to tell you exactly how many people are going to come into your restaurant next week, and I'm going to also furthermore tell you exactly what they're going to order. And now you would be like, wow, with that information, I can create a very efficient labor plan, right? I know how many cooks, how much waiting staff, how many people in the host positions, and how many openers and closers, and at what time and how when they should be coming in and when they should be leaving and things like that. So predictive capabilities of AI is a game changer for these businesses because now you can predict exactly what your demand for labor is going to be. And once you set the foundation, I need so many people. Now you feel very good as a business about saying, okay, I know how much I'm going to spend. Now it's a matter of allocating the shifts to people. Let my employees pick the ones that match their preferences. So now it's a win-win for both, right? That's an example of it's you have to look at it from both sides. Ultimately, our customers are running a business there, and labor tends to be very high on their P&L because these are labor-intensive businesses. So they're, getting them to be less cost conscious is not possible. We just have to help them be more efficient, and in return they would basically extend that to also employees and giving employee choices and things like that, and it creates a really good both culture and operations into these businesses.
Sanish, what data do you need to compute that with your AI? Because I imagine, are you integrating with their payment processor or
Yeah.
something like that? You are.
Yeah, we get so when you think about so it depends on the industry and depends on the business. So for example, in quick serve restaurants, a lot of it is kind of items and guests or customers. So if you get their historical data from their point of sale, for example, now we automatically generate these AI models that learn from this historical data set and predict the future for the next, several weeks, because that's generally the scheduling window. And furthermore, over the years, we have become very sophisticated and accurate in that regard. Now we can also, discern the impact of weather on the business, the local events, school calendars, other factors that influence the traffic into a quick serve restaurant. For example, one of our customers, they were struggling with properly allocating labor, to the point of demand, and we applied demand forecasting, and the impact of something like rain or weather is different in different locations. In some of their locations, they had a much larger sort of seating area, and when it's and there was a lot of foot traffic outside. When it's raining, people would actually step in the restaurant and buy more things. In a different location, they had less of that, and people would just just continue driving and not stop because the weather wasn't. So it really depends. It's
I could
very
see
localized.
Cinemark. We talked before we hit record. Cinemark would
Yeah,
be one of those if it's raining outside. I'm going to go to a movie. How
yeah,
does
yeah.
Cinemark use you?
I mean, same, all of the above. Is demand forecasting is so foundational for accurate and efficient workforce management in Legion scheme of things that we almost all our customers choose us because that's one of the value points that they see, of course, and all the employee goodness and employee engagement and stuff like that. But it starts with an efficient foundation of forecast. Once you forecast as accurately as possible. Now comes the next layer of the cake, which is okay, now let's figure out how much labor you need to meet that demand that you forecasted. That's another AI powered optimization process where you say, okay, here is the right amount of labor, not too much, not too little, where you can optimize employee skills to getting those things done. Then comes a third layer of the cake, which is let's generate a schedule. The schedule actually then specifies who goes where, when, at what time. In that process, that's also AI powered. In that process, we take into account a very broad spectrum of attributes like employees. Where do employees want to work? When do employees want to work? Their skills, their productivity, their positions, all of that stuff. Excuse me. So you can see how this builds out to be something that is super effective for business and the labor cost, but also gives a lot of value to employees in terms of how, when, where they want to work and really elevates their experience.
I want to talk about Phil's Coffee because you have an
Yeah.
interesting start to this journey. Can you talk about the influence of Phil's Coffee?
Absolutely. I think it was, for all entrepreneurs, I say choose your first customers wisely because they are going to be and don't and when I say wisely, what I mean is don't go with the easiest customer. Really think about which is a customer who's actually going to stretch you the most in the right way that is consistent with your vision for the company, right? And one of the first conversations I had with Jacob, who was a founder of Phil's Coffee, was I remember it very, very clearly like it was yesterday. I kind of gave him a pitch. I didn't have anything at that point, no product, no team. I
Yeah,
was just
what was
walking
your
around.
pitch?
Yeah, just walking around drinking coffee at Phil's Coffee, right? And I met him and I said, hey, look, I want to rebuild scheduling and workforce management in a way that employees feel like it's the best schedule they have received, okay? And as if they're working for the best manager they've ever worked for, who's creating a personalized schedule for every single one. And while we are also making sure there's automation in how that schedule gets generated and what's in that schedule. So it was a very sort of broad pitch at that time, but it had the right elements in it that employees would really kind of benefit from this. And I remember Jacob was he said, okay, he thought about it for like a couple of minutes and over the years, I realized that was Jacob's style of there's a lot of intuition, right? That he kind of puts to good use, and he said, if you build it, we will use it. Okay, which I thought was like I was like on super happy. I'm like, wow, that sounds easy. But then he
You're
said,
like, if
but
you built a rocket ship, I'd go on it,
yeah.
Sanish, but you still got to build a rocket ship.
Exactly. He said, but he has two conditions for me. One is he wanted me to build it in his headquarters, like so basically come to the Phil's office and work, right? Which I thought was actually fantastic. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe that was like a hurdle in his mind, but for me it was like, wow, this is great because I'm also looking for office space. So
You're giving me an office? I'm there.
yeah, and he said, and you'll have to train yourself as a barista and do the job. And that was, I didn't honestly, I was like initially I was like, how hard can it be? Right. Well, it was super hard. It was very, very hard. It was 5 days of pretty intensive training, and I think I don't think I would became a good barista. Honestly, I wouldn't drink my own first coffee. So, uh, but it gave me a real appreciation. And Jacob was absolutely right. It was a real appreciation for, hey, if you're gonna solve uh and frontline worker experience problems, you better step into their shoes and develop the empathy and make it real. And I think those types of experiences really set the foundation. And then as we started building the platform, I uh, uh, Phil's gave me 7 locations to work with to pilot my capabilities and the AI-powered scheduling and things like that. And I would go to all 6 of the 7 locations every week. One of them was in SoCal, so we would go like once a month. But I would spend a lot of time with managers and see watching them build schedules and the amount of hours and pain they most managers really care for their employees and they want to make sure the schedule is right, but it just was so hard. So it was really good to go through that several months of working very closely with one customer. We said no to others at that point because we really wanted to focus, and the team was very small. But that was the foundation, and I don't think we've really, uh, looked away from those core values that we learned during that time.
How long did it take from start to creating the product and actually charging for it?
Yeah, we created the product in about 6 months, but I would say it wasn't great. The first version of it, we would and the way I know it wasn't great was because I would go and meet every manager and watch them use the product, and sometimes they would be polite about things. Oh no, I'm like, no, no, no. If you don't like it, just like you don't have to hold back. And so we iterated on that for another, I would say, 3 to 4 months. So by the time we launched nationwide with Phil's, we were, I think, I want to say in month 10 or month 12, something like that, about roughly speaking, a year. Yeah.
And then at this point, you're focused on fills and not any
Yeah.
other. At what
Correct.
point do you decide, okay, we're going to go out and you're perfecting the product with fills, obviously launching it. What point do you decide, okay, we're going to go out and do some business development and get more clients?
After we launched nationwide with Phil's. And I know that's not always the conventional way of doing it or the right advice even. But this is a complex product to build, and we thought we were fortunate to find and partners with someone like Phil's where we saw eye to eye with the ultimate vision. And we felt like we had to see this through before we basically distract and defocus ourselves.
Yeah. How do you decide on pricing?
There is some precedence that was set on pricing before with workforce management, so we sort of adapted to that. And over a over a period of time, it was a lot of experiments, customers giving us feedback. Very large customers would want sort of volume discounts and so on and so forth, which makes sense. Now we are going through at this point in the life of the company, we are going through interesting pricing experiments with outcome-based pricing with AI and seat-based pricing, which is more traditional
That's
SaaS.
traditional, like seat
Yeah,
based, if someone has X number of people on it.
exactly, exactly. So that's what the industry is used to. So we want to kind of definitely start there, right? But as we evolve and as we become more and more outcome focused, I think the industry would is definitely developing an appetite for outcome-based pricing, which personally we welcome because we think that's ultimately how all software should be judged.
Sanish, early on, do you decide, okay, I'm going to fund this thing, or am I going to raise money, or do you just charge someone like Phil ahead
Yeah.
of time and give them a great discount for funding this thing?
We ultimately, I mean, initially I was looking to fund at least to a point of time, and I started funding it. Um, but very soon I realized that, there were some amazing investors who I met who were providing a lot of value, like folks like, Maynard at Win Labs and Ross Fubini at XYZ. they were I would say 99% of the conversation with those folks when it wasn't about investment or money, it was about just advice and and strategy and product ideas and those types of things. I was getting so much value out of those conversations that when it came to, hey, do you want to invest in the business? It just was such a natural question and an answer that we didn't like. There wasn't like a pitch deck and I'm pitching and showing business plans and stuff like that. And I hope like especially early stage entrepreneurs, they all get to experience something like that because that was I thought it was very impactful and it almost like didn't feel like an investor entrepreneur relationship, but like they were more like partners, right? So and I got a lot of value. And Ross is still on Legion's board after all these years and kicking ass with his own XYZ ventures and stuff like that. So but that's long story short, and ended up doing seed round and then Series A, and Series A was with Norwest Ventures, and from that point onwards, it definitely the focus was on starting to scale the company.
What did the team evolution look like? I mean, initially it's just you, and then
Yeah,
who do you hire early on, and from
it's
there?
still me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. I know you're a computer science
Yeah, yeah,
genius, but
no,
not
no,
that big of a genius, right?
it's all the team actually. It's we one of the things that was I don't want to say it's unique to Legion, but somewhat not. It's a little bit uncommon. Is I was a solo founder, and but that enabled me to hire some incredible people. Um, and really, basically, from my standpoint, all the early employees were like founders, and I treated them, and especially you can see Gopal that he was the first hire. I worked with Gopal in my prior life, incredible technologist, employee number one, for all practical purposes, co-founder of Legion. So that just allows, having uh, that situation allows me to think about, there wasn't this magical line between founders and then everybody else. It's like, hey, everybody else walking in the company, especially at the early stage, you are all going to shape the company in a way that's no less than a founder. And from my standpoint, hiring the caliber of people, that also would be the no different than the only reason why they were not founded because of timing. That's not their fault. That's just where the point where we met each other. So I've always kept this perspective that founders are not special people or anything of that sort. Your goal is to always, or said differently, your goal as a CEO is to always hire founders and people who can basically take the company forward, but have the ownership mindset and really make an impact.
Sanish, one of the three things you mentioned, which the trifecta, right?
Yeah.
Why are people leaving or staying? Is you mentioned the instant pay, right?
Yeah.
At what point do you integrate that feature, and how does that work?
We integrated that about 2 years ago. Um,
Okay,
and so that was
so fairly recently.
yeah, fairly recently because the getting workforce management right, both from an employer and employee standpoint, was goal number one, and that definitely takes. I mean, that was a substantial surface area to cover. Um, Instant pay is something we added recently, and it's been amazing from a user adoption standpoint, from a value end user employee value. It really completes the thesis in many ways. Of course, there's a lot more we can do, but the foundation of employee value for frontline workers, as I said, schedule empowerment, modern experience, and on-demand pay. Those three things are now in the app, and we just see extremely positive results from the employees.
With this, how does it work? I mean, is it
Yeah,
do they
the shift
just
is over.
yeah.
Assuming they've signed up for instant pay, which they can do with from the Legion, excuse me, mobile app. After the shift is over, they can go to the app and they can draw a portion of their pay. Some portion is still left for the payday for taxes and garnishments and things like that. But they can draw a good portion of that, and there's a small fee for same day and it's free for next day. So depending on how urgent it is, our cost structure is different for that. There is a free option if employees want, if they can wait until next morning. And we see employees use it all the time, and employees use it for all kinds of things. Emergency situation, not an emergency situation. Our longer term thesis on that is, I think pay ultimately is going to be, especially for shift work, is going to be shift based and not payroll cycle based. So we are basically shifting our employee experience in that direction.
Yeah, it's an interesting feature. Did that come from just talking closely with
Yeah.
employers or more employees?
Employees. In when we, I remember, so 3-4 years ago in our employee surveys, which we do broadly, not just Legion customers, and you'll find that on our website. It's state of the hourly workforce. We publish this research report every year, and um, I want to say about 4 years ago, uh, one of the questions we ask is, besides pay, what are the reasons that would make you choose a job or leave a job? Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the report, and I encourage everybody to download it. It's got a lot of great information in there. So about 4 years ago, this instant pay showed up as a little blip on that, and every year we've watched it grow significantly. Now it's like 40 something percentage of the reason why an frontline worker would make a leave or go decision, right? That is massive. And when you combine that with schedule empowerment, other things, or the trifecta, as I called it, that's over 90% of the reason why an employee would stay or leave. So these are things you can actually incorporate as a business. You can incorporate these things into your kind of your employee technology suite and really see great value.
We talked about AI, of course, and AI is built into, there's a whole Legion AI page, of course.
Yep.
But talk about the impact of AI on brick and mortar specifically, right? Because they're not sitting at a desk like you and I, not,
Yeah.
always at the computer. How does it impact them?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we spend a lot of time thinking about that because that is our world of customers, and that's our market, and that also, by the way, happens to be majority of the employees out there in the world. It's over 2 billion, deskless workers. Um, our there are multiple areas of applicability for a brick and mortar business of AI, and I think my advice and recommendation to operators in brick and mortar businesses: don't be on the sidelines. Don't think this is for technology industries or knowledge work and things like that. You can benefit a lot from AI in the following manner. One of the things we talked about was the predictive capabilities, right? So just predicting demand for labor, predicting when your customers are going to come in, predicting who is going to buy what. All these things are possible to do today with AI with a very high degree of accuracy. And that just establishes the right plan that you can build for your labor, for your customers, for all that stuff. So that's number one. Number two is, when you think about optimizations of schedules or making sure each employee is personalized, that's a lot of permutations and combinations, right? If you got a roster of 30 people in your store, which is a very small store in the scheme of things, uh, you could have over 250,000 permutations of how you can create a schedule, right? Especially if you want to cater to your employees' preferences. So you can easily do that and fully automate that with AI. But now with generative AI, there is a whole new possibility that did not exist before. Keep in mind, all these are deskless workers. In other words, they're not sitting in front of a computer, as you said, and looking at software programs. And guess what? They don't want to. That's not their job. So how do you engage with this deskless workforce and enable them to do complex things in software without being in front of that software? all day long. That's the world of generative AI and LLMs have really opened up very high caliber, high quality, and effective agentic framework for conversational interfaces, for doing all these things. For example, a manager on the go can receive a nudge from an agent saying, "Hey, Joe is going to be late for the afternoon shift. Do you want me to reassign the shift to somebody else?" Yes, yes, reassign it to somebody else. Should I pick somebody or do you have somebody in mind? Just go pick somebody. Like that type of stuff without going back to the desk, without going to a device, without going to a phone and doing all these things, but just being so conversational, but yet being completely in control of the operations on the floor. Those types of possibilities did not exist before this effective generative AI and LLM capabilities that we are seeing now. So that really rounds up the AI potential in workforce management beyond predictive capabilities, beyond optimization capabilities to now these agentic capabilities that really can assist every single worker and persona, whether it's a manager, a district manager, an employee, a cashier, in new ways that did not exist before.
I'm curious, Sanish, the buyer behavior,
Yeah,
because you have some big customers on
yeah,
here. Do they typically go, Sanish, yeah, we're going to try this at one location, then we'll do two, then we'll launch across? Like, how do they
yeah.
normally say they want to integrate Legion?
It's a great question because that is the biggest uh, hurdle, honestly. It's adoption and change management, ultimately. Um, a majority of the operators in labor-intensive industries are not known for being on the cutting edge of
Yeah,
technology.
they're like, let's change
Yeah,
everything. Give
yeah.
ourselves more work, right?
That's exactly how they don't think, right? So it's our job then. I mean, what does that mean? It means it's our job at technologies to make sure what we are building has that adoption in mind. I'll give you a great example. When we first started creating automated scheduling, um, the first incarnation of that was click a button, here's the schedule. And managers would be like, I don't think this is the right schedule. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is not how I would do it. I don't think Joe should be working at 9 p.m. Why not Jane? And then we realized, and we had an answer. We would like explain, like, well, no, but this is what data show. This is what the input. Here's what AI is. But uh, the real problem was automation lacked explainability. We needed the managers to understand the why and explainability and transparency builds trust. So we started evolving our application UI design to constantly talk about if you want to know why the demand forecast is higher at 2 p.m. Yeah, you can click here. If you want to know why this person got assigned this shift, yeah, you can click here. If you want to know why 394 hours of labor were allocated for Tuesday and not 395. Yes, you can slice this in this way. So over a period of time, like, and this is by the burden and the opportunity for all AI builders right now. It's the at least in the phase of adoption that we are in right now. Maybe this would be different 3, 5 years from now, where it's just well understood AI is always producing the right results. But for now, two things are important. One is explainability, and also to get the input back from the managers. So if managers say, "Yeah, I understand this, but I still don't agree, and I'm going to go ahead and make a change to the schedule," then we got to learn from that because there is something that is being instructed back to the AI engine. So this cooperation between the human and the AI in context of a workflow and the explainability of why certain decisions are being made goes a long way in driving adoption. And we've seen this through a massive amount of volumes of data that we've got. And now we just have a point of view of what drives user adoption. Then there's also a different problem, what drives a company adoption. And that is basically, to exactly what you said. Most of our customers want to start with a smaller set of locations. They want to refine that, try it out, and then they scale up from there.
Sanish, whenever I've gone against Waze in my directions, I'm like, oh, that's not a good way. It was a mistake. Actually,
That's a
it's
mistake,
like I
exactly.
should have just listened to Waze.
Exactly.
But people have certain tendencies and things they like,
Yeah,
and
indeed.
I think sometimes Waze is incorporating more things than I know. So I've learned to mostly listen to Waze. So maybe, same thing with your software. Like, okay, I don't know, maybe I would do it this differently, but it's spitting this out for probably 17 different reasons that maybe I'm not seeing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, so what was a proud moment? You know, Phil's was obviously a proud moment from a customer perspective. What was the next major milestone of a customer that like, oh yeah, they gave us a chance?
Yeah, I would say in the early days, Dollar General was one of our first largest enterprise customers out there. I mean, they are one of the largest employers in the country. They're well over 180,000 employees. I think well over 18,000 locations at this point. Uh, so to take on a customer like Dollar General, and they operate like they are nationwide, truly nationwide. They are in small cities,
Oh,
large
I
cities.
mean, every small town I'm in, there's like Dollar
Exactly.
General.
Exactly. And to take a customer like Dollar General and have at that scale size and
Who
go
makes
through
a
the transformation.
decision at that type of company? Who's deciding, let's take a look at this? Like what type of position?
Yeah, there's generally a combination of people, right? There's oftentimes maybe one sponsor generally that maybe uh, in retail store is head of retail ops or with in collaboration and partnerships with the CIO or because it's such a big technology transformation to leave aside the business process transformation. And oftentimes and more recently we see the chief people officer or CHROs be big part of Legion decision because it has such a positive impact on the employees. So that's sort of the three most engaged C-level personas. But within those three, I think operations generally takes the lead. Okay.
How do you get a conversation with Dollar General?
So most customers in buy this software, this category of software through very thoughtful RFPs. It's not ad hoc. It's not, they would have a sometimes, 10 chapter with
They
with
said they're in the
1,000
market to
questions.
switch. They're in the
Yeah,
market.
exactly. Yeah, there is a impetus to switch that generally comes from within because they may be running on older technology or inflexible software or no automation and things like that. At least larger businesses buy that way. Now, there are sometimes smaller businesses or mid-sized businesses who would be opportunistic and pilot something and then make a decision to replace. But it's generally a thoughtful RFP, and the RFP process for larger businesses can go on for months, and they evaluate every single thing like software, your credentials, referenceability, enterprise readiness, all security, certifications, all those things. And that just goes to say how much this platform matters to the customers.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see the journey here. Do you still must have customers that come to you because they hear about it through another
Yeah,
brand, I imagine?
all the time. Yeah, all the time. I mean, one of the most surprising things for us was customers hear through other customers, and then we dig in, and then we realize there's employees who have gone from this to that, and they have sort of
That makes sense.
influenced upwards, and that's just so great to see.
They're like, I want instant pay. And like, you don't
Yeah,
have it
exactly,
here.
exactly. Like, or I used to work in this company, and they would let me on my schedule and pay me instantly after the shift, and this your place doesn't do that. Like, why don't you talk to the Legion people like
Hmm.
that?
There's a certain cool virality to your software, right? Because if you have
Yeah,
180,000 employees and like you said, there's going to be turnover. They're going to go to different companies.
exactly.
That's like the best type of virality. Then you have, who
Yeah.
knows, like 18,000 people a year going to a different company and,
Yeah.
send
Is
them
the silver
t-shirts.
lining of turnover.
Yeah. I mean, not that you want turnover,
Not
but,
that you want
but,
turnover.
but whether there's not or
Yeah.
there is, I guess
Yeah.
either way you win
Yep.
in a
Exactly.
sense.
Exactly.
Um, we just have a little bit of time left.
Yes.
Sanish, first of all, thank you. I have one last question. I want to encourage
Yes.
people to check out legion.co. As you saw, they have some great resources. Obviously, the state of the hourly workforce report, you can check it out and other things on their resources page. Um, my last question is just some of your favorite resources. It could be books, podcasts, it could be business or health. I know you I've heard you talk about health and longevity, and David St. Clair stuff. So I'd love to hear some of your books, podcasts that I should check out, and other people.
Yeah, well, good question. I'm still into mostly those topics. I mean, there's AI is drinking from the fire hose right now because it's evolving so quickly and it's exciting, but it's also sometimes overwhelming to stay on top of, and you feel like you don't read for 5 days and you're already like falling behind. So that is, it's always hard to keep up, but there are, podcasts like Dwarkesh and others who are just absolutely amazing in the knowledge that you gain. Um, Health is longevity and topics like that. For me, it's more of casual reading now because I've kind of gained um, I would say sufficient knowledge at least to kind of take care of myself. And now it's more about, just being disciplined and trying to, put that in practice, which is where sort of the problem statement has shifted. But it's always fun to read about those things
Are there
and
any like thought leaders on the health front that you like? I know I've heard you mention David St. Clair. I don't know if
yeah,
there's any
I think
others.
David Sinclair is still like the top to me, but there are others. Yeah, I can't think of some names off the top of my head, but
Some of
I
the
think
recent books I've listened to is Dr. Mark Hyman had a book that just come out. Dr. Peter Attia also had
yes,
a book on health and longevity
I
as
was
well.
gonna say mention Peter Attia because he is fantastic. His advice is so practical and doesn't require you to go and buy 1,000 supplements, which is good. It's just hey, stay healthy, stay happy, have good friends, like that type of stuff, which is awesome. Yeah. Uh,
Anybody on the business book or leadership
I think for
book?
me, I'm at the phase right now where I learn, I attempt to learn would be a better way to phrase it, a lot from our customers' businesses. I make it a point. Yeah, and it's also fun, and I encourage that to all entrepreneurs. Can you, and sometimes you may have like thousands of customers, and that's fine, but you can still pick the a set of customers. But are you able to understand their businesses and break it down like an analyst would, or like a board member would? And that oftentimes gives a lot of insights to opportunities to for your business. But even if it doesn't, it's just a great skill to develop to be able to look at a business, look at a 10K, talk to some business leaders, understand the priorities, map the two, and really have a good point of view on what's going on in that business and where they're going.
Totally. Sanish, I
Mm.
want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out legion.co to learn more, and we'll see everyone next time. Sanish, thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.